I think there can be an emphasis on people going, right, if you're not feeling very well, you reach out for help. Well, actually, why isn't it the other way around? Why aren't you the person that's in the right state of mind goes, actually, that person's not quite right. I'm going to go and reach out and find out if they are okay and start that conversation.
In 1837, Horace Mann created the education system, a system at the time designed to pump out factory workers and professors. The same system that is still being used today in the 21st century. Now, Mann's system is backfiring. We are being moulded by the same industrial system that has existed for close to 200 years. That system delivers us into a digital economy that has no need of our outdated skills. This isn't our teachers' fault. This isn't the government's fault. This is due to a rapidly changing world full of technology and unforeseen circumstances. And us Gen Zs are caught in the middle. Welcome to the Driven Young podcast, the podcast for stressed, overwhelmed young Australians, teaching you practical life skills you can implement now to set yourself up in life. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young podcast. Today is another episode all around mental health for young people, how it is so prominent and how we can deal with it. I am joined by Andrew Woodhead, a product manager currently working at Batyr, a for-purpose preventative mental health organisation created and driven by young people for young people. He is also the author of a beautifully illustrated short story book called Light. This book explains how depression can take hold, what it feels like, and presents proven strategies that anyone can try, learn, and practice to improve their mental health. Woody and I have a great conversation all along this theme and dive deep into some stories I have heard about kids in school. How I think mental health has become way too normalised with young people to the point it can actually be detrimental. And Woody shares his experiences and practical tips we can use today to help those around us. This is a super important topic. Mental health is at an all-time high right now for our generation, and it is crazy the stories I'm hearing from boys and girls in high school. As per usual, if you get any value from this episode or from the show in general, please consider leaving a review on Apple or Spotify. It only takes you 2 minutes, and it really helps me and the show reach more people. Let me know what you think of this episode, and don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Woody on Instagram. The links are below. Now, over to Woody. Woody, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Byron. Good to be here.
Super excited to chat about kind of get into mental health and get into, a pretty serious conversation, but a very important conversation. But before we do, I'd love to know a little bit about your story, kind of what you did after high school and what you're currently up to.
Yeah, cool. So I'll go from being an adult, I guess. So I went to university, got a degree in computer science and management. As you can probably tell from the accent, I'm not from Australia. Yeah. Originally from Yorkshire in England. So I did my degree in that. I then went to work in London, followed everyone's dreams and hopes of going to the big smoke. Yeah. And I basically started my career working in IT consultancies. So it started off quite broad, hardware, software, infrastructure, and then moved more into the web world. And so I did a job that took websites and mobile phone apps from end to end. And then I sort of started to specialize in user experience. And then I decided in 2016 that I wanted to drop all that and go travelling. So came to Australia, big fan of cricket, so I wanted to come play cricket over here. And then, I had a job in Australia, in Sydney for almost 3 years. And
you didn't go Bondi, did you?
No, I didn't. I did go the classic up north, and I did go to Manly. Yeah. So I'm a stereotypical POM in that sense.
Because everyone I meet from Bondi are all from London or all from England. Just tourists are all like, "Oh, come to Bondi, it's amazing."
Yeah. It still has that name. I think it
does.
Attracts people big time. And then I've had my challenges with anxiety and depression. One when I left university, and then a second a couple of years ago. And then I decided it was time to give back, I guess. So I applied for a job at Batyr, which is a young person's preventative mental health org, to work as a product manager on their first digital product. So I joined them in December last year, and then I've been working on a project with them ever since. And we're close to building and releasing our minimum viable product of our mobile phone app.
We've spoken about that on the podcast, minimum viable product, which is basically what's the minimum version of something we can get out there and just test it to make sure that it's worth improving. Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, if we get it out there and no one likes it, then there's no point in putting $1 million or whatever we want into it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's an important concept. But I like how you got your computer engineering skills, and then you went, okay, I've suffered from this anxiety and mental health disorder, and I love to be able to help other people who are going through this, but I've got computer skills, so how can I help that? But you still found a way. So you found the company which provided, so now you get the best of both worlds. You're using your skills and you're doing something that is, meaningful.
Yeah, that's right. I felt super lucky when that job came up, because it was exactly that. My background and my skills, and wanting to apply them, I couldn't think of a better cause at the moment. Obviously, it's close to my heart because I've been through it, and I do want to help people with it. So I feel super fortunate that this opportunity came up.
Yeah, awesome. And so tell us a little bit about like what anxiety and what those times were like for you. Like, how old were you? So you've moved countries, so you don't have that support of your family kind of around you. Would you feel lonely? Like, what was going on in your brain?
Yeah, sure. So there's kind of two experiences I'd draw on. The first one was when I left university and went down to London. So really, I'm a country boy at heart. And when I went down to London, it was just like so many people, everything moving a million miles an hour. It was my first job out of university, and there was like 2 or 3 things that just built up, and I guess just combusted and just exploded a little bit. So I was struggling to cope with a new job because I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing. I was in a big city where I didn't know my way around. It was like a big commute on the tube, which is like super stressful for someone that's normally just like in a car and just bumble along. And then also at the time I was questioning my relationship with my girlfriend. So those 3 things I think just triggered it. And then I think my head just went into overdrive, and it was almost like I'd hit like the fight or flight button, and I just wanted to run away basically. Yeah. And my head started to race and just like hitting panic mode basically. So I remember like going back home for Christmas, and just being just like really unwell basically. And I was super fortunate because my mum was there for me, and she got me to go along to see the doctors, and then so I kind of went through the process of going to see a psychiatrist, and a combination of those appointments with some medication helped me get back on the straight and narrow. And yeah, kind of that period only lasted like 3 to 6 months, and then I seemed to like find my path. And then it fell off again a couple of years ago. It was being away from home, a long way from being home. My grandpa was unwell, and then like my visa situation was uncertain as well. So like lots of areas of uncertainty, and like should I stay, should I go, what am I doing? And then that just speeded up my mind and just struggled. And then it all knocks on, like not able to sleep as well as you can do,
which makes it worse and worse.
And
then you lose focus, and so it just kind of compounds, or snowball effect almost. Exactly.
It's almost like that vicious cycle that you get in, and it's like, how do you then break it?
So you broke it through seeing someone and some medication. So is that something you like to recommend to people who are suffering from what you're suffering? I think the first step is to like reach out for help to anyone, like your family or your immediate friendship group, and have that conversation. That's like the step one. And then you can see if you can work through it with the support of people in your network. But if it gets too much, then you should go to your local GP and then get help. I think they do say that like the most successful outcome is when you combine medication with like psychological support. So for me, it certainly helped. I was very fortunate in the fact that I got a psychologist that worked well for me. Yes, because I know that's can often, a lot of people have gone to see psychologists or therapists and they hated them. Or it just didn't even help at all because they didn't enjoy being with them. So they just dreaded it. It's like almost like, they had to go to the appointment instead of wanting to go to the appointment.
Yeah, that's right. I think you've got to find that fit. But I think the other thing that's quite bad about the system in a way at the moment, and like some advice that I would definitely give to people would be, and this is an experience I had in Australia, was like I was referred to a psychologist, and when I rang up, it was like, I won't be able to see you for 4 to 6 weeks because I've got to honour my relationship with my existing clients. So like if someone's in need and they told it's 4 to 6 weeks, then that's not good enough. So
it's a long time.
It's a long time, especially when you're struggling. So fortunately enough, I had that first experience to go, and I phoned the GP back and went, I can't get into 4 to 6 weeks. What do I do? So I was then referred to a group of psychologists, a practice, and then I just put myself on the wait list. And by nature of it being mental health, people drop out or like are not as reliable in coming to. So like if I was saying, if my one bit of advice would be to anyone that wants to go see a psychologist but is struggling to get in there in a good period of time, put your name on the wait list, and then they'll ring, and you will probably have a session within 1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so it's just get out there, because a lot of people drop out. So, and people don't even think that. They think it might be, 4, 5, 6 weeks, but if you put your name on, it's more likely to be 1 or 2.
Yeah, you're in the game. Exactly right.
It's a little cheat.
Yeah, it's a little cheat.
Yeah.
It's a really useful cheat as well. Like, I only found out about it by pure fluke, I guess. But yeah, definitely.
And I'd love to know, because I kind of want to bring something up that I've actually been talking about this quite a bit lately, because I've been, just by nature, because my target audience is kind of 15 to 22. So I like, whenever I meet someone who's in that age bracket, I love to just talk to them and see what's going on at school, just to understand what's happening. Because, I only graduated 4 years ago, but school has changed a bit since then with the culture. And I was talking to a girl, and she was saying that she basically feels left out of her friend group because she's the only one who doesn't have mental health problems.
Wow.
And so, like, all her friends have mental health problems, and they talk about it in such a normalized way, like the same way adults would complain about Trump or the government or something. That's the way kids are complaining about their therapists.
Yeah. And
so because she doesn't have a therapist, she's feeling left out, and it's also exhausting for her because it's all this negative energy constantly bringing her down. Yeah. And I was like, wow, and her friends are in and out of hospital. Friends are often, a lot of them are on antidepressants. Yeah. And these are like 17-year-old girls or 18-year-old girls. And so it's just become so normalized. Like, are you seeing this with Batia in your company? Like, do you feel like this company is now more important than it's ever, been?
For sure. I think there's a couple of things I would talk about. The first one is that so we believe in a classroom of 30 students that there's like at least 7 people struggling with mental ill health.
I'd say higher, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd say
and
higher.
When I speak to people about that, they say that.
Yeah.
And it's only a few of them that actually reach out for help anyway. So I'd say it's positive that young people are like speaking to therapists and trying to deal with it. An interesting one for me is my doctor said this, and I thought this was really an interesting way. Like, this whole world that we've manifested at the moment through technology is like completely different to other generations. Completely. So like for him, it was like you would go to work, you'd do your job, and then you'd go home, and then you'd socialize with people that you know and that you like, and you wouldn't have that social comparison. And I think that's a big problem with like tech at the moment, is you're trying to compare yourself to something that's not reality.
Yeah. And if you look at, we spoke about this in a previous episode with Brent, he was saying that the 4 largest causes of mental health for younger people were like underage drugs, underage sex, underage smoking, and there was a 4th one, but I forget it. But it made sense. I was like, okay, yeah. And he said in the past 10 years, that's actually dropped by 50%.
Yeah.
Underage, sex, drugs, smoking.
Yeah.
But in the same time, mental health has doubled or gone up by 50%.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what is it? I mean, we think it's the phone, it's social media, it's comparison.
Yeah.
It's not the phone to say, but it's what the phone, the phone's a vehicle to so many different things.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, as you mentioned, comparison. And, you used to go to work, you'd have your work friends, and then you'd go home and shut off, or you'd go home and then you hang out with the people you like. Exactly. There is no shutting off now. It's 24/7.
That's right. Yeah. But we're making a concerted effort to join that game. So at the moment we run workshops and school programs, and we get a young person with lived experience to go into the school and to tell their story about how they've been challenged from a mental health perspective, and then what they've done to overcome it. And we have a program called the Being Heard Workshop, where we get young people together, and it's a 2-day workshop, and you learn to tell your story. And it's the main drivers to do that are to when we go into the schools, increase help-seeking behaviour and to normalise the conversation around mental health. And now we're building a digital storytelling platform so you can have a voice. And the hope is with that we'll get insights which we can hand to the Department of Health, service providers like Reach Out, Headspace, and then they can learn from these stories and be more in touch with what's going on. So those conversations that the girl that you spoke to about, like, we'd be getting that on a device, and we'd be able to do something with it.
Yeah.
That's what we hope to achieve.
That'd be amazing. Another story, just to kind of drive this point, was I was talking to another girl. I think she's year 11, so just turned year 12, right?
Yeah. Which
means she's 16, 17. And there's a girl that she recently killed herself at their school, and she jumped off a cliff.
Yeah.
And, when they announced it at assembly, for the next 2 or 3 days, there were so many Instagram posts of people going to that cliff spot and taking a photo and uploading it to pay their respects, but they barely even knew her.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people that, whether you want to say it or not, they wanted, the attention and they just wanted to, feel like they're a good person, when it's like, if you barely even spoke to her or barely knew her, you don't need to be going up there and making a big emotional post about her. It's like you never even spoke to her.
Yeah.
It's the same with like funerals. My brother actually had a mate kill himself earlier this year or last year. Hundreds of people at the funeral, yet he killed himself because he felt like he had no one.
Yeah.
Because all his school friends who he hasn't spoken to in 3 years came along. And my brother, who was actually one of the few people that was actually close with him, was kind of going, who are all these people? Like, he didn't care about any of these people.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like a disconnect. And it's just such a like crazy thing that's happening, which I'm sure you're probably seeing. So being able to see those conversations will be really powerful, and people can share their stories. And this is what we were kind of saying, it's like TikTok almost for mental health stories.
Yeah.
Like the app layout is, it'll be a video with someone's story, and you can just keep flicking through and see what other people are going through and how they handle it, which is going to be really cool. I love it.
Yeah. No, we're super excited, and we really want to encourage creativity with this too. We don't just want it to be videos. We want it to be like artwork. We want to do podcasts. We want to get music in there. Like, there's so many different ways in which young people can be creative and express themselves. So we're hoping with our new product that we'll be able to do that and really get it out there and get young people using a platform in a positive way. Yeah. So they're not necessarily going to a cliff and taking a photo, which actually doesn't mean anything to them. Yeah. And one thing we are doing with it as well, which will be really interesting, is we're going to moderate all the content that comes in. So that'll be great, because we'll be able to put all positive content on there. Well, like, obviously there'll be like some negative components to stuff, because it'll be about stories with people that have had mental health.
Yeah. But it'll be all mature content.
Yeah, absolutely.
It won't be like, immature, like making fun of people.
No. It will, and we'll interlace it with like fun facts and things like that, so to keep it interesting. And the great thing as well is we'll be able to like talk about anything on the spectrum. It could be like COVID-19, how's that affected people, or how do people with bipolar survive and get on with things in their life and help manage their state of mind. Like, there's lots of different opportunities with it, so it's cool.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting, and it's so good that we'd be using an app in a positive way, as opposed to an app that enriches us instead of an app that makes us feel like crap.
Yeah,
because I see a lot of stuff, like, even when I post that content, I see other people post content about saying, kids, you need to get off your phones and stuff. Yeah. And people in the comments will be like, my phone is the only time I'm happy. Or they'll say all this stuff, and they're like, that they completely disagree. And I'm like, yeah, you don't realize what the phone is actually doing to you. Yeah. Like, yeah, you might be, if you're just playing a game, sure. But if you're on social media, you'll be having fun for now. But that compounds when you're on social media, for 1,000 hours every year. Yeah. And then that actually goes, subconsciously into your brain, which people aren't really realizing over the long-term effects. Yeah. And we're starting to see that with people who've grown up with social media since they were 10 years old. We're starting to see the mental health effects that it's having from the people, like I kind of mentioned before. Yeah, totally. Well, I think like you do get a dopamine hit when you're using 100%. Your phone, and there is like so many clever hooks to keep people like engaged with it. You've seen The Social Dilemma, I assume? Yeah. Like if anyone who hasn't seen The Social Dilemma, like it's quite good, but the thing I really liked was how they made the visual representation of the phone, and they had like these 3 guys who were like pretending to be the AI, and they were just like, he hasn't touched his phone in one day, let's send him a message from his ex-girlfriend, or let's send him a notification that his ex-girlfriend just liked someone's photo or something. It's like really dark and manipulative, but that's exactly what you just said. Yeah, absolutely. And I do think though that there is an element of and I know like phones are addictive and they're like so powerful and useful for a multitude of reasons, but there's definitely a need as well to disconnect from that and learn to be mindful. Yeah. And like, if people keep going with all this continuous technology, like the concentration spans will go, and you'll become like just so reliant on technology, and your mind just won't function to the best of its ability. We've gone for like 30 minutes to 7 seconds or something. Yeah. Our concentration span. Yeah. And I'm in marketing and video marketing for like Facebook ads, and like one of the rules is when you're doing a video ad, it's got to be first 3 seconds has to be engaging. Yeah. It's on TikTok, it's the first half a second to 1 second. Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? And so that's like the point we're getting to, where it's like we just you need that hit. Otherwise, if you don't have our attention in the first second, we're not going to keep watching. Yeah, totally. And everyone agrees with this. I see, and I'm sure, I don't know if you struggle to watch movies now, but so many people struggle to watch movies without having their phone near them. Yeah. It's like, what? Yeah, for me, I'm trying to practice like not going down that route. So if I watch a movie, I turn my phone upside down, like albeit it is within reaching distance. But I think like
I think on a scale there's like early intervention to prevention to crisis support, and like where we operate is at the start of that process. And I think technology can be useful for that, and it can be powerful, but so too can being in nature, exercising. I'm a big fan of meditation, eating properly. These are all principles that we still need to give attention to. Like we do need to eat properly still. Yeah. Even though there's loads of fast food available.
And, I think, who was I talking to recently? Someone asked me what my thoughts were on on medication for mental health. And it's like, I think the problem with a lot of medication is that people will just rely on that. Yeah. Like, I've got medication, now I'm going to be fine again. It's like, medication will help, but you need to be going outside. You need to be trying to connect with people. You need to be eating well for your body and stuff. Like, there's multiple things that will help you, your mental clarity, so to speak. I think the founder, you listen to the episode of Are You OK Day, he said, it's been proven that a 30-minute walk in the bush or just a 30-minute walk will do the same as an antidepressant pill.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all over that stuff. I think it's like so important. People shouldn't neglect that either. Like, I think exercise and all that sort of stuff's more important than ever before, really.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing as well is awareness, right? Like, if you're aware that you're spending maybe too much time on your phone, when you're aware of something, you can then do something about it. So if you're aware and you're not really going out and doing the exercises, then maybe there's this podcast could be the like little thing to go, actually, do you know what? I do need to go for a walk 30 minutes. Like, there's evidence to suggest that it does well for my body and mind. So like, we need to focus on that sort of stuff. And like your content as well about being driven by young people, like young people still need to champion that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't forget that. And we need to listen to their voices and act on their voices. So if there are things that they can do to encourage people to behave in that way, then we need to listen to that and try create a society that does something about it. Yeah. Otherwise we will just start leaning more and more. And then I would say like depression and anxiety will keep on rising if we don't try and tackle it.
And it's huge.
Yeah.
It's hard to know with this generation because they joke about it non-stop. And when I say they, I mean me as well. Like, someone will be like, "Oh, I'm depressed," or they'll say like, "Oh, I've got anxiety about going out tonight" or something. And it's like, we don't know if they're actually diagnosed with anxiety or if they've just got a mild form or they're just taking the piss. Yeah. It's hard to know because it's become so normalized to joke about it and that kind of dark humor sort of thing. Yeah. Which on one hand I think it's good that people have the self-awareness to joke about it. Yeah. But on the other side, it's like, I don't know who's serious. I don't know like what's going on because by the way it sounds like everyone's got depression. All Gen Zs have depression. The way they joke about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one for me. Is that because from the research we've done at Batir, when we spoke to all the young people that we did as part of our co-design process, we learned that a lot of young people are aware of mental ill health, but they don't necessarily have the language to deal with it. So like the fact that they're actually like have dark humor and throwing it away, it's probably because they're not educated in the first place. They're not actually aware of what anxiety and depression is or what it's like on a spectrum and where they sit on that spectrum. And therefore they're now aware of what that word is, but they don't really know the details of what it is or how it manifests itself. So I think there's a job on us as a society to educate them so they are aware of what that word means in its truest form and then what they can do about it. So it is great that more and more conversations are happening, but we need to teach people how to articulate what they are really thinking and feeling.
Yeah, and it's important, I think what you said there is understanding it's a spectrum. Yeah. It's not I have depression or I don't, although it kind of is that, but it's more like how treating it more like a spectrum. Yeah. It's understanding that you might not have depression as diagnosed by a doctor, but you could still be close to it and not be doing very well and still struggle to get out of bed and that sort of stuff. And so I think that's really important that first we understand that. But I guess secondly, did you want to explain to us what anxiety and what depression actually is? If you're saying you don't think we have a clear understanding of kind of what it is, because I'm not even sure I do.
Yeah. So. Well, I think that's an important point in itself, right? It's unique to everyone though. So I can, and there will be like clinical terms and definitions for it. For me, anxiety, as a physical manifestation would be like I hold my breath if I'm anxious or my stomach can drop. And these are the things that I notice that would lead me to say that I'm feeling anxious. Depression, I think, is another level above that. So I think that's when you're starting to, for me, it's when you like trigger your fight and flight mode and you're doing that all the time and then your head's starting to race and then you're actually like losing control of your mind and what you can do with it.
Sounds like a lot of overwhelm.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I that's how I feel those different types of emotions or characteristics, or however you want to phrase them. But yeah, I think like being in school, mental health needs to become a module at school.
100% it does.
And then these things are then brought up. So it can be like a textbook version of what anxiety is or what depression is, but it can also be an open conversation as a group in a grown-up fashion to go, well, what does it feel like for you? And then there's like this combined understanding. You've got a classroom of people that've all got a voice, they all can hear. And if they don't feel like talking about it, then that's fine. That's when there's just other avenues to go down. Like
you've created the space.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
If you're in a space where everyone's talking about it and you're still not comfortable talking about it, at least you know that it's now not taboo and it's normal to talk about. So you might go home and talk to your parents, or you might go home and maybe research or something. So you're creating the space where it's safe.
Exactly, yeah. And even in that case, like say you're in a classroom, right, and you don't feel comfortable telling the teacher or contributing to the conversation. If there's an assignment that says like let's write about, and you can even like do that in your own room, in your own privacy, write down what anxiety and depression is for you or how you're feeling. And then at least then that when you hand it into the teacher, they're aware of you and they can actually reach out and support you.
It blows my mind that school is still focusing on these subjects that don't really matter, but they're neglecting their students' mental health. And so who cares about getting an A? Who cares about maths or science or even English if your kids have mental health problems and they're not even happy? Like that should be the very first priority. And it's huge.
Yeah.
And, you know, these are the years where they're in high school and their brains are developing, arguably the most important years of their life in terms of learning. Yeah. Yet we're just, you know, school doesn't give us any access to that. The only access you get is maybe through like a company like you or a third party that comes in and you get like half a day with them max. Yeah. And it's just crazy. It's blowing my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is a lot of value in what you can learn from like English and maths and things like that, but definitely mental health needs to be more on the radar. Yeah. Batir do a great job of going in there and networking and getting in front of classrooms, and our like results are really good. Like the number of people that reach out for support off the back of our programs is like rising significantly, which is great. And we are having positive conversations. We do an exercise which is really cool, whereby we get the room to write down what they think the words are for that relate to mental health, which could be like the negative words, if you like, depressed, anxious, like. And then when we go through the workshop, we then get this young person with lived experience up and on, like telling their story, and then at the end of it we ask them what are the words that relate to mental health now, and it'd be like resilience, hope, determination, grit, all these things. So you can educate a classroom and you can shift that perspective and that dial. So I think you're right. I think the Department of Education really needs to think about how they can get that on the curriculum and standardize it too. And
also understand that if you can improve people's mental health, that's going to improve the results in all the other subjects.
Yeah, totally.
Like let's say if you want to get better results in English, math and science or whatever, I would say you could leave those the same and just focus on improving their mental health or giving them a better headspace, and then that's going to naturally happen.
Yeah, totally.
And the same with like if people are being bullied, or you know if there's bad toxic relationships in the year group and stuff, if you can help, if you can create a safe environment and talk about that sort of stuff and talk about mental health and stuff, and people open up, there's probably going to be a far lot less of that. Yeah, because I've been in environments where exactly the example you gave, where people kind of opening up and stuff, and it's really cool. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah, and it's like, especially if you know it's a group of men or something where it's really taboo and uncommon. Like it's pretty rare you'd find a group of men or boys who would just sit there and open up about their mental health problems. I think it's a lot more likely that girls talk about that stuff, which is great, but men really struggle with it.
Yeah, right.
So, and I've done that with like men's groups. It's super powerful, and so I think it'd be really cool if we were creating environments like that at school, or even in uni groups, or I don't know, just somewhere. Yeah,
it's an interesting challenge as well, though, because like if you think about it, the teachers at the moment are trying to deal with that as well. So like they're trying to do their job of teaching.
Not the teachers' fault at all.
Yeah, no, agreed. So it's
I say it's the system.
Yeah,
you know, the teachers have to teach to what they are told to, otherwise they'll get fired because the kids won't pass, and then blah blah blah. Yeah, and I've put out content. I've had teachers comment saying, we talk about this stuff all the time in the staff rooms. Like, we wish we could teach this, and it's like, okay, so. You know, they're trapped in it just like the students are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there should be efforts, and I think there are efforts, but they could be stronger to address that for sure. It's also like cooking skills as well. Yeah. Like, why is that not at school? Yeah. Like, there's so many people that know how to like cook these days. It's quite bizarre, really. Oh, I mean, I could do 10 podcast episodes on just this alone, this sort of thing, like emotional intelligence, leadership, communication, financial literacy, basic economic understanding, political understanding. I don't know anything about politics. Yeah.
Yeah, same.
You can't, I mean people who are 30 and they've got no idea what politics. And it's like, we just had a simple understanding, but that's kind of going a little bit off topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, point is, it shouldn't have to be a third party like Batir, like the company coming in. Although it's great you guys are doing it, it should be part of the curriculum, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe they can learn from what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I hope so. We're always open to working or partnering with anyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of the solution, right? Like, people need to work collaboratively to achieve a good outcome. So whether that's mental health organisations pairing together in that space, or whether it's pairing with the Department of Education or whatever it is, like, having an open mind and an open heart to trying and experimenting with things is like, you're only going to succeed if you do that, because you'll learn, and then, you know, like, we won't get it right first time, but if you keep chipping away at it, like, we will as a society get to that point where we can help the young people that are struggling.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so what do you think a solution is? Obviously there's no one answer, but how do we try, and besides like going to workshops and stuff, and how do we create environments for ourselves, or how do we try and reduce the amount of mental health that's going around for the younger generation right now? Yeah,
so I think we as a society need to take ownership and responsibility for it. So like, there's the healthcare professionals who do an amazing job, but it's the everyday Joe on the street that needs to learn. They need to make a concerted effort to learn about these things. They need to understand how to start a conversation, how to have a conversation, what they do with that conversation, what the help resources are that are available. I think all these things are super important. And it's the ripple effect, right? And like, now I love this analogy. Look at COVID, right? If one person has the infection and they walk around and they give 10 people, and that 10 people then go and give it. Imagine if you've got that for mental health. So that one person is armed and ready, and they know how to start a conversation. They know what they need to ask and probe, and the information they need to receive to like make a judgment call as to what they need to get, how they need to get help, and where they can go. And then they like impart that knowledge on loads of different other people, and then the ripple effect. You've all of a sudden got a society whereby conversations can happen. They know how to have them. Young people know how to respond to them, and then as a society we can address it and we can help each other, because that's what it goes back to, right? Like, we all want to be connected. We all want to be part of a community. So if we can foster a community that works together and helps one another and has those conversations, then that then starts to address the issue.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, there's people in positions of responsibility that need to do their job. You know, we've talked about teachers and healthcare professionals, but it's the others that need to have, like, those on a building site need to know just as much as the person in the bank or whatever, that like, everyone's human. Everyone has their own mental health. Everyone has their own physical health, and they'll be in different places, but let's talk about it.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned the word connection there, because I think even though we're in a world that's never been more connected, we've never been more disconnected. Yeah. In terms of like real connections. Yeah. I think that's probably the word there, is real connections. Like, young people really struggle to have real connections and deep connections. They've got thousands of, you know, bullshit connections with X and X or whoever, that girl that they, you know, worry is going to judge them or whatever. Yeah. But they really don't have proper strong relationships. And like, that's where I haven't suffered from mental health, but I've had some low points, and the lowest points are when I didn't have people around me. Yeah. That's me personally, because I'm quite extroverted, but I know a lot of people relate to that. They're not having those strong relationships around them. And so I think a big part of it is what you just said, you know, people connecting with one another. It's like, and it's just kind of coming back to being human. Yeah, totally. You know? Like, we just need to connect with more people and have conversations with no hidden agenda. Like, you know, have a conversation with someone and you're not trying to get a job from them, you're not trying to get them in bed or you date them or whatever. Just have a conversation with them. Yeah, totally. And I think the responsibility also needs to shift as well, right? Like, you need to become more aware of what's going on in other people's lives and be a bit more perceptive. So like, I think there can be an emphasis on people going like, if you're not feeling very well, you reach out for help. Well, actually, why isn't it the other way around? Why aren't you the person that's in the right state of mind goes, actually, that person's not quite right, I'm going to go and reach out and find out if they are okay and start that conversation. Which is the whole Are You Okay Day. Yeah, exactly. And then you're attacking it from both ends, right? And you'll get to the root of the problem, and like, problem shared is a problem halved. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so, what would you say are some practical takeaways that people can do? If they've made it this far into the podcast, they're obviously quite interested in stuff. And like, let's say we run a scenario. Yeah. Or the listener has a friend who they notice is a little bit down. Yeah. Like, what should they do?
Well, I think,
and they suspect that he might be suffering from anxiety or a bit of depression or something.
yeah, I think the first one is to assess where they are and how they're connected to you. So like if you're in the classroom with them, then you need to know that the conversations like that aren't to be had in a classroom or in a playground.
Environment
is important. So I think finding a quiet place where it's just the two of you, to have to connect on a physical level, as a first pass if you can. But if you can't, then using technology to just ask the question, send a text saying, "Are you okay?" Or like maybe say that you've noticed something that doesn't quite fit right, and because you care and love for them, that you want to know and you want to help. Like, and I think the thing is, like, a lot of people in the world do want to help each other.
100%.
So like, just having like a couple of one-liners to understand, to ask the question is super valuable. Yeah,
I had a guy on the show who he's got a whole company and they do like expert kind of networkers sort of thing. And when an exercise they run is we did a table and he'd get out your phone. He says, find 5 numbers you wouldn't normally text. So it can't be like your mum or someone close to you. And he'd get out your phone and say, "Hey, hope you have a really great day." That's it. No hidden intention. You're going in with the expectation they're not going to respond. Yeah. So you can't be disappointed. And people will land clients through that. They'll have someone reach out and just be like, "Oh, thanks so much for reaching out," and then they'll have a chat and they'll become a client. Yeah. And it's just like off a message that meant nothing. And if you do that, 3 times every day, it's just being human, the sort of thing. And the important thing is to have no hidden agenda. You're not trying to convert them into a client. You're not trying to, as I mentioned, get them in bed, or you're not trying to seduce them or whatever. Yeah. You're just saying,
you're
"Hey,
trying to be genuine." Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Completely agree. But I also think as well, like when you're having that conversation, you need to warm it up too. So it can't just be like
that conversation.
Like, "Are you okay?" Like straight into like, "You seem depressed," It needs to be more subtle and so, it could be like, "Hey, how are you going?" And then it might be, "Yeah, I'm all right." And like, okay, you might not be as all right as you maybe think. Like, I've noticed.
I saw what happened the other day. Yeah. Like, "Are you all right?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm all right." It's like, "Are you sure?" Because, I'm always here to talk. So
exactly. Yeah. Perfect. And then I think the great thing with that is then there's like 2 of you in the battle, if you like. So if someone is down and struggling, then it's not just you fighting on your own. You're actually with someone that cares for you and that's going to hopefully support you throughout the process.
It's also understanding that, like, "Are you okay?" and "How's your day?" are kind of like rubbish sentences. Yeah. It's like, "How's your day?" Good. They could have just had their grandma die or something and they'll probably say good anyway. Yeah. They're not going to just be like, "Oh, my grandma died," because that's pretty heavy or something. Yeah. Like, everyone's going to say good. You pretty much all the time. They'll just say good. "How's your day?" "Yeah, it was good." "Yeah, not too bad." Yeah. And same with, "Are you okay?" "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm good." You've got to go further. If you said, "Are you okay?" to someone, I think it's unlikely, unless you're quite close, it's just going to open up just like that. Yeah. So as you mentioned, you kind of, if you sit down and say, "Are you okay?" "Oh, I saw what happened the other day." "Oh, how do you feel about that?" And try, I could peel back the layers slowly so that they feel comfortable. And then it also links back to, even if we'll go to a selfish reason, like if you help them, they might help you in the future. Yeah. Sort of thing. True. We talk about this thing called the 1,000 doors concept. So if you see someone, and you help them, feel like a better person, and maybe in a year's time, after they've gone out of it, they'll be able to help you back or something, and you've established a nice relationship. Yeah. So even for a purely selfish reason, like there are beneficial reasons.
Comes round, yeah, for sure. And like everyone, like life is tough, right? It's a roller coaster at times, and things happen that you just don't expect. And so, I think it does come around like, everyone in the world will go through a period of difficulty in both of their mental and physical health. So I think it's only right and fair that you provide support when you're on the up, when someone else might not be on the up. Because you can bet your bottom dollar that push comes to shove in a few months' time or a couple of years' time, you might be in that situation. You might even not foresee it, right? So you might lose someone through an accident, or who knows what might happen.
Life's unpredictable.
Unpredictable, exactly. So, yeah, I think it's important to bear that in mind when you're thinking or having these types of conversations.
A principle that we speak about quite a bit, and I love it so much, and I thought I'd just bring it up now because I feel like it's quite relevant. It's called the slingshot method. Yeah. So it's basically where, so for the listeners, if you imagine a slingshot, the further back you pull it, the more energy and the further it'll go. So if I pull it back here, it'll probably just fall. But if I pull it all the way back here and shoot. And so we say that with like negative energy. Say, for example, COVID-19 hits for me. I lost a bunch of my clients. I had all that negative energy.
Yeah.
And the way we say is you can actually slingshot it back around and turn it back around. And my whole life, I feel like I've done this. So for the COVID example, I lost, I went from like 8 clients to 1 client, which meant I had to move home. I had to move out of my apartment. I had to cut costs and everything, and it sucked. And I had that negative energy going back.
Yeah.
But then I started a TikTok account and I started some other stuff, and I got JobKeeper, and it launched it back. And now I'm actually in a better spot than I was when I started.
Yeah, awesome.
And so I think it's a really cool mindset to have. Same with when I was a kid, and my house burnt down when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And, that's a whole story in itself. But basically, we didn't have a home for like 3 years. We were just renting in different places. But that led us to move to Sydney. And the only reason I'm here is because of the opportunity that Sydney provided. Yeah. And so you can see a lot of these slingshots throughout my life. And most of you listening or yourself can probably think of a slingshot moment in your life. And I just love that mindset, going in, understanding that you can turn a negative into a positive.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've got to have the bad to appreciate the good.
Yes.
And what you experience at the time might not feel like you can get out of it. So my book, Light, it might not feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And it's just a matter of time and working it out and trusting in yourself and the way in which you're going and drawing on your network to get where you need to go.
It's funny you say, or what did you say? You just said you need those negative experiences to appreciate the good ones.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually probably going to get him on the show, not for months. This guy called Eddie Jaku. He's a Holocaust survivor. Yeah. And his book is The Happiest Man Alive.
Yeah.
For that exact reason. Like, he went through 8 years of hell. Like, he was in Auschwitz. He lost his family. Experienced some horrific things. So horrific that he now, anything that's, happened since, he's so appreciative of.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to get him on the show, but probably not till February.
That'd be amazing. I've seen him at TEDx, I think.
Oh, yeah. He's done a lot of TEDx. He's huge.
So good.
He just turned 100 years old. But I just got a call from the Jewish Museum, which is where he works at, and he's in a retirement home. He's not allowed to see anyone for a while. So
that's a shame.
To get him in person, I'll have to wait until next year.
Yeah.
But it's that exact thing. We have to have those negative experiences to appreciate the bad ones.
Yeah, totally.
Or the good ones.
Yeah, experience the bad to realize the good. I think so.
Yeah, awesome. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
But before we wrap up, I'd love to just know, what would your number one piece of advice be for the younger generation, like 15 to 22, going through high school, just entering the workforce sort of stuff? Doesn't have to be mental health related, but what would your number one piece of advice be for those people?
That's a tricky question.
It's very tricky, yeah.
There's a heaps of things that go off in my head.
Feel free to list a few.
Yeah, for sure. I think stay connected physically with your friendship group, whether that's inside school or outside of school. I think being part of a community and a club is of significant value, like whether that's like a sporting club or like an art or book club, whatever, like, because that then allows you to be out there and engaging with society. And if there's one thing we know through COVID, right, is that we want physical contact, we want engagement, 100%. We want to be part of a community, we don't want to be cooped up in a room. Sure, some people are introverted, but like the majority of us want to be out there and living and breathing it. So make sure you create that environment.
Can I just add on that?
Yeah.
Because I love what you just said, and the way I like to say it is the system. So the cool thing about clubs, about church, about that sort of stuff, is it creates a system where it's you meet up every single week. There's no, do you guys want to hang out this week? It's just every Sunday, the family goes to church, or every Saturday we play soccer together, and then we get beers afterwards. Yeah. And so someone who finished school, high school, and all my friends went to uni and we all had part-time jobs, it's just chaos because you've got all these different schedules. And I went months without seeing my friends. Yeah. And so by joining clubs or, finding a system that works, like something that's every week. I know guys who every Friday they'll go out to and get dinner at this club, not like a dancing club, but like
restaurant, pub, something like that.
SR, I forget what it's called. But basically they go out there every Friday. Yeah. It's just easy. Yeah. And so I think it's so important that you join those sort of things, and it just makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, totally. Routine is the thing there, right?
Routine is a great
like really helpful. It gives you something to live for and look forward to.
Yeah.
Another thing that's hard about COVID, most people like to travel. You haven't got the affordance to think about that. So I think also another program that we run at Batir is called Looking Out for Your Mates. And I think just like look after yourself, but also look after others as well. Like show that caring and compassionate side, because you might be in a fortunate position, or you might also be in an unfortunate position, but like if you're open to the idea of having conversations and helping people, then like you're a good human, and you'll make a positive difference to your friends and the society as a whole.
And understand that everybody has problems.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think it's easy for us to kind of look at wealthier people.
Yeah.
And you know, burn the rich sort of stuff. Yeah. And it's like, well, wealthy kids have problems. You know, everything's been handed to them, which means no one respects them for anything they do.
Yeah.
Or maybe, you know, whatever it is, everyone has problems. Yeah. And so if you can remove that negative mindset, just go, how can I help? Yeah. Sort of stuff.
And then my last one would be, don't believe everything you see on social media.
Yeah.
Like, social media is fantastic and it can connect people and you can really sell the good things that you're doing, but don't be fooled. There's always like another message underneath there. You might see someone that you think has the most perfect life, but you can bet your bottom dollar they don't.
Yeah. Especially if they're only showing the perfect path.
Yeah, that's not reality.
Yeah.
We don't live in that sort of environment. Well, you know, we're not a computer either. You can't just switch me to happiness.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of contributing factors. Like, things are changing and moving all the time. So
awesome.
I think that's an important one too.
Well, Woody, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And for anyone who wants to find out more about Batir, about you, about this app, which I want to be heavily involved in, so I'm sure I'll be promoting that and, you know, I'm going to be putting out heaps of content on there when it's live. You know, podcast content is perfect for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be, you know, having a lot of fun with that. But for anyone interested, let's go to batir.com. What's the best place to go?
So our app's going to be called Our Herd.
Yeah.
So go to ourherd.io. We'll be there. Me personally, I've written a book called Light. So you go to thefinchfoundation.com to buy a copy if you're interested.
Yeah.
And then batir.com is like the website that we have for our organisation. So we're responsible for the creation of the app called Our Herd. So.
Yeah. And links will be in the bio below.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Woody, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Nice one. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this episode of the Driven Young podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. That means the world to me. And if you got some value out of it, please shoot me a message on Instagram or reach out to me. Or I would love for you to leave a rating or review on this podcast. So make sure you are subscribed, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.